child?
Going to Grandma Biscuit with my stepdaddy Curtis.
Okay.
Right there off of, I want to say it was Moreland Avenue, but he used to wake us up every morning on a Saturday and take us to Grandma Biscuit. And they used to have these biscuits called cat head biscuits.
Okay.
And he would buy a sausage and biscuit. I'm quite sure it was like $1 back then. But that was a lot of money. My stepdaddy was a mechanic. And he would take us there and he would set us in Grandma Biscuit, me and my sister, at 5 o'clock in the morning. He would never eat. He would buy us the biscuit. He would drink a cup of coffee. And that was, when him and my mama broke up, that was one of the things I missed the most. That father figure, getting us up at 5 o'clock and doing the things that I was used to do. So that's a big memory for me.
Did you stay in contact with him after they separated?
Yeah, he used to come over and drop off school clothes and stuff like that. And, he still, actually when he died, I helped bury him.
Wow, that's unbelievable. What's your proudest moment as a child?
My proudest moment as a child, I remember I went to this, back in the day, they would have these Black history plays in school. So kids don't get to do this anymore, but you had to really act out. If you were Martin Luther King, you needed to know that speech. You needed to be dressed like him. You needed to change your voice. You had to become that person.
Right.
And this particular year, I was Lena Horne, and I had a play, and I did this play, and I asked my mama to come, and I had my speech down pat, and I performed my speech, and I looked in the audience, and my mother wasn't there, and it broke my heart. But I remember walking down the street and I said, "She'll never hurt me anymore."
Wow.
And I think that's when my heart became hardened, and I knew I was going to always have to take care of myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, what type of relationship did you have with your mom?
My mom was a alcoholic. She had 5. I was her 6th child. And I know she dropped out of school, probably elementary school, because my mom was born in the 30s. And, she gave us what was given to her. So it wasn't really a relationship.
Because she was a young mom like yourself,
She was a young mom like myself.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You was raised you mentioned, I read in your story that you was raised in a bootleg home with your grandfather, right?
Yeah.
Like 10 people at a time.
It was a lot of people.
A lot of people living there. So what was, because I was raised by my grandparents, and I know my life would have been a lot different had I been raised with my parents, because the discipline and what they instilled in me, it was a lot different, grandparents to parents. So what do you remember most about being in that environment?
The bootleg house. Pickpocketing people, music.
You were pickpocketing drunks?
Drunks, yep, music.
You was never Ms.pat?
Well, shit, we was trained too. Don't let me get too close. I might know how to steal your necklace. Just a lot of music, drunk people, fights, all kind of crazy mess. Gambling, people pulling up to the house with moonshine, sex, seeing people have sex. Everything went at Granddaddy house.
Right. So when you say you were trained to life of crime, basically pickpocket, but why would you pickpocket the people that were going to come back over the next week and buy more alcohol and drink?
Well, they didn't remember.
They just thought they lost the money or something, huh?
Well, once you fall asleep, you don't know what you got. My mama trained us how to do that.
Wow. You were like, oh, mama, this ain't right.
No, at one point, I was watching Sesame Street, and my mom would give us like $2 to $3 or something like that per customers, and I was learning fraction, and they said 10%, and I asked her for 10%, but neither one of us knew how to count 10% of what I stole.
So she gave you 10 cents, like a dime?
No, she gave me $10.
She gave you 10. So you were only 10% of whatever you took in.
Yes.
But she didn't know what 10% meant.
And neither
you
did I.
didn't know what 10% meant. So she gave you $10, and you might have
$5 to $10, and I was happy because all I wanted to do was play Pac-Man.
The video game.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, Ms.pat. I read that your mom couldn't read.
Yes.
And you dropped out. You had your first kid at 14. You got pregnant at 13. First kid at 14. Had another kid by the time you was 15. Dropped out of school.
And I had an abortion when I was 16. Yeah.
Damn, Ms.pat.
By a married man.
Huh?
By a married man.
Oh, Ms.pat.
What?
I mean, so he was married. So I'm let's just say for the sake of I don't know how old he is. I'm going to assume he's probably in his mid-20s, maybe late 20s.
He was in his early 20s, and I was 12 when I met him.
Did your mom know about this guy?
She didn't care. It happened to her. You know, each one teach one. So it happened to her. So, you know, nobody protected her. So how did she know how to protect me? Now, I knew how to protect my daughter because I told my daughter when I had her, I said, you would never go through what I went through.
Right.
And she did.
Because you had to break the cycle. Because a lot of times, Miss Pat, people raise kids kind of how they were raised.
Yes.
Unless they choose to break that cycle. If you were disciplined tough, a lot of times you discipline your kids.
I did discipline tough. I made a lot of mistakes with I had 2 sets of kids. I call them my Medicaid and my Blue Cross Blue Shield kids. But I made a lot of mistakes with my first kids because a lot of that hurt, I brought it into my parenthood. And when I met my husband, he was like, hey, you don't be talking to the kids like that. But he grew up with a mom and a dad in a Christian household. Right. You know, I grew up being talked to a certain way, and I did the same thing to my kids.
Right. I read that you guys got baptized at a lot of different churches because they feed you.
They would give us baskets. They would let us go to the bottom of the church and we would get food. You know, back in the day, if you had financial problems, you would go to the church and get baptized and the church would write you a check and then you can go to the pantry. Well, that was a hustle for my mama. So we got baptized a lot, like 25 times, to the point where I was like, I'm sick of this damn water. And she would hate when they wrote her a check on Sunday too, because she couldn't cash it on Monday.
Ms.pat, you gotta write a book.
I did. I wrote a book. It's called Rabbit.
No, this needs to be a movie.
It do need to be a movie. Hollywood.
Because your upbringing. I mean, look, a lot of us have. You know, obviously, we all go through something. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's more than others. But listening and researching your story, I'm like, man, for you to overcome and to be where you are currently, do you look back and do you think about how blessed you actually are?
Yeah, but to get where I'm at, and I tell this every time I tell this story, I had to forgive the people who harmed me.
Oh, okay.
You can't get anywhere when you hate. When you hate something or somebody, that hate will control you. So there was a time I hated my mama for allowing this grown man to sleep with me. You know, letting other men. My baby daddy wasn't the first one. I've been molested several times before he even got to me. So I grew hate for my mother. And then once I, got older and realized what my kid's father had done to me, I started to hate him too. But when you hate something or somebody, you can't live. Yeah. So my mama is dead. So I was never going to be able to ask her for forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And when I asked my kid's father, he said, well, your mind and body wasn't 12. When I said, why did you sleep with me? I was 12 years old. He said, well, your mind and body wasn't 12. So I knew then I had to forgive him so I could move on. And people always like, I tell these stories with a smile on my face. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to cry?
Right.
What am I going to cry for?
To hold that kind of resentment all those years.
Yeah.
My grandma used to say, Ms.pat, there can never be freedom without forgiveness.
That's right.
And so you finally, in order to forgive them, you became free. So if I'm hearing you correctly, was it your mom's boyfriend that molested you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you tell her about it?